What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here with another 2-minute drill episode. Wednesday, June 16th, man, halfway through the week. Everything's kind of winding down. College football is all recruiting right now. If you're a recruiting fan, this is the greatest time of like your life. This past 2 weeks, these past 15 days have just been berserk. We're going to get to some of those recruiting updates tomorrow, but we have this topic picked out. Listen, we credit ourselves on being the only podcast that covers every facet of college football. We do the Power Five, the Group of Five, FCS, HBC. I mean, we do it all here on the Bluebloods. So if you're a Group of Five fan, this is your moment to shine. We got some really cool Group of Five top topics. So, Brandon, the playoff is expanding here, and there's been some interesting takes on how it won't help the Group of Five. All it's going to lead to is blowouts. But our guy Josh Pate and some people over at 247 had a show recently that said the AAC will overtake the Pac-12 in 5 years due to this playoff expansion. So let's take this topic and kind of expand it a little bit. So first, I want you to answer: do you think that's the case, and why? And let's kind of get into which Group of Five programs, in our opinions, can benefit the most from this college football playoff expansion.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if it's necessarily the case. I think that we're going to see a lot more conference realignment come in the coming years. I think a lot of teams are already looking toward that. And that's a whole different episode about predictions on that. But I mean, for instance, I think Arkansas is going to leave the SEC at some point, stuff like that. And I think that Cincinnati ends up joining a Power Five conference, whichever it is.
Probably the Big Ten based on geography, I would imagine.
Yeah, or potentially the Big 12 because they let
anybody. They got West Virginia just if you drew like a line around each conference, West Virginia is the most ridiculous Big 12 team of all time.
It's insane. It's so crazy. But yeah, man. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree that the AAC is going to lap the Big 12 or the Pac-12 necessarily. That seems like a little bit of a stretch, right? That kind of seems like you wanted a headline, so that's what you went with, or you wanted your article to really pop, and so you're like, yeah, they're gonna for sure do that. Yes, there are teams in the AAC that are better than most of the Pac-12. I would have bet on Cincinnati against any Pac-12 team this past season. I mean, that's just they would have beaten Oregon. They would have beaten USC. They would have beaten any Pac-12 team for sure. UCF in a good season would probably beat all the Pac-12. But then you have the bottom of the AAC. You have South Florida, who's never beating anybody. So I think the top of that conference is really good. Obviously, Memphis had their great season. But the bottom of that conference is mediocre at best. The middle of that conference is mediocre at best. So I think they're super top heavy. And so that's probably where we're coming at from that angle, I guess. But I don't think that they overpower the Pac-12 at all. I can't see that happening in the next 5 seasons.
Yeah, so the argument is that these schools are strategically located in hotbeds of recruiting. And so once you inject a little bit of that college football playoff money into the conference, those schools are going to explode on the recruiting trail. And in 5 years, we're going to see a Tulane be a borderline Power Five program because now they're getting some of the best talent out of Louisiana and Texas, which they should be in the – I mean, they're not saying they're going to beat LSU year in and year out, but it's going to really improve that program. And you look at where some of these programs are. Tulane in a big market in Louisiana, Lafayette in a big market in Louisiana. You see, even South Alabama in the Sun Belt being down there in Mobile in the recruiting hotbed in Alabama. And then you have Georgia State and Georgia. You have Coastal Carolina in a big city in Carolina. And then Cincinnati's in Ohio. You also have Memphis in that Tennessee kind of SEC base. And then you have, I think UCF has the best shot right now. If Gus Malzahn can recruit at the level he did at Auburn and they make a college football playoff, Brandon, I'm talking about it could be one of the most ridiculous things to see UCF in 5 years if Gus Malzahn can make the playoffs when this thing expands.
Yeah, I mean, UCF has shown us that they can play dominantly in a Group of Five conference. I mean, a lot of people think that they should have gotten a chance in the playoff that season. It's the same case for Cincinnati this year. These teams play really well within their conference. I don't know. I still don't know if that's the case, Zach, just because, yes, that is a hotbed for recruiting. But, like, if you're a kid growing up, like, in northern Kentucky or southern Ohio, you're right there around Cincinnati, and you have scholarships from Cincinnati, you have scholarships from Ohio State, and you have let's just throw one out there for the Pac-12's sake. You have a scholarship from USC. Where are you going? Because I personally am going to land somewhere between USC and Ohio State, because it's not about what this school can afford, the amenities they can provide. It's about the history, the culture, and it's about like the relevance of those programs. Yes, I understand that Cincinnati can get in the playoff with this new 12-team system. But I don't know, man. I legitimately don't think that we're going to see like a 12 or 11 or 10 seed win the college football playoff. Not in the first couple of years, anyway.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, I think you're going to see it improve, and I agree that it's going to improve the recruiting in the Group of Fives. I think we're all looking at the AAC being the biggest beneficiary because personally, Brandon, I already include them in like a Power 6 scenario already. So I think the AAC champion, Brandon, this is a hot take. I think the first 5 years of this 12-team playoff, I actually think the AAC champion makes it more than the Pac-12.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, Zach. Like I said, I think that Cincinnati could have beaten any team in the Pac-12 this season. I think that's the case.
I mean, I think that's why Luke Fickell is on like one of the best trajectories. And then you saw his defensive coordinator Freeman, Brandon, LSU. If Freeman said, "Listen, I need a stadium named after me," LSU might have named the stadium to get him this offseason as the coordinator. Like that's how hot of how hot coaching prospects are coming out of Cincinnati right now.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And everybody remembers the episode after he decided he was not going to LSU and he was going to go to Notre Dame. And I was just on this show like I don't want to say depressed. I don't want to put that in like a negative light, but I was very sad.
Hey, they did good. They got a really good D coordinator out of the things. But, Brandon, let's wrap this segment before we move to the next one. Not who you think will make the playoffs if you had one or anything like that, but which Group of Five programs will benefit the most from this expansion, just in terms of improving their program, improving their recruiting, and eventually maybe being competitive enough to make a college football playoff one day?
That's tough. Obviously, Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's like the number one team on my radar for that. I think UCF's up there with how dominantly they've been able to recruit the past couple of seasons. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's probably one of the greatest. He's probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now, and he just landed at UCF after their two great seasons, like the two undefeated seasons back to back. I think those two. I'd say like potentially UL Lafayette. Louisiana Lafayette over in Louisiana. I know that they're kind of like a one-off this year, that season. I don't know if we can write that off or not. They have a really good coach who's deciding to stay in Napier. Maybe – and then, like, if we're going with, like, geography's sake, like you were saying, Zach, I think that we might see, like, potentially, like, a San Jose State benefit from this at some point, because they're in San Jose, California. I mean, they're recruiting the same region that mostly Stanford is. I mean, they're right there by Stanford, Cal, and then they're also competing against teams like USC and UCLA, and even up to like Oregon and Washington as well. So I think those are some good examples of teams that could benefit from this.
Yeah, so I think the obvious ones that are going to – so I think the difference between a school like Cincinnati, UCF is, yeah, they have a really good shot to make it, but they're already right there for me. So I don't know how much they can really improve, if you get what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
I think a program that a lot of people are forgetting, Brandon, and I haven't heard anybody who's covered this talk about this team. Are we forgetting how good Boise State's been for like 15 years?
That's a fact. That is true.
I mean, there's been more years, Brandon, I think, since, 04, 05? There's been a majority of those years, I think Boise State's been better than a majority of the Pac-12 champions.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right.
And I mean, that program now under Andy Avalos out of Oregon, I mean, they lost Harsin, they lost Chris Peterson previously. That program, no matter who the coach is, they're always leading that conference in the Mountain West in recruiting. They're always dominating. San Jose State got them this year, but I think they've made like 8 consecutive Mountain West title games.
Right.
It's something just crazy, and they've won 3 out of the last 5. I think Boise State, if they go, which they have the potential to go multiple years in a row, could leverage it because Boise State's expressed interest to move up to the Power 5, Brandon, could be that Pac-12 team eventually that kind of moves in and helps grow the perception. And they're really, I mean, I guess you could say, I mean, if the Big 12 stretched all the way to get West Virginia, if Boise State expressed interest, why wouldn't you stretch and go get Boise State?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think Boise State's the main one that pops into my mind, but I also agree with you. I wish you would have committed to it just a little bit more, but I think Louisiana Lafayette, as long as Billy Napier is the head coach at Louisiana Lafayette, that team's going to be tough. And he has shown the ability to recruit against the best of the best in the state of Louisiana and Mississippi. Brandon, he landed 2 of the top running backs out of Louisiana this year in Terrence Williams and Montrell Johnson, got a top 20 JUCO player out of Mississippi in Nigel McGriff, and got a Robert Williams out of Cedar Hill, Texas. He can stretch over to Georgia. Brandon, this year on September 4th to open the season, they travel to Texas. If I had to pick that game today, I would be leaning toward Louisiana Lafayette.
I wish I could agree with you, Zach. I really do. I'm a big Raging Cajun fan. Everyone saw Raging Cajun last season. You'll catch me in my UL gear come this fall. But, yeah, I think you're right, Zach. I mean, Texas is losing a lot. They're starting with a brand new head coach and Steve Sarkisian. I think UL Lafayette has a real shot at that game. And not only at that game, but I think they have a real shot to play for the Sun Belt Championship again. I think that they have a real shot to finish somewhere in the top 15, top 10 in the country.
Yeah, and then my honorable mention, Brandon, this is another school I don't think people talk enough about. Appalachian State.
I was about to.
Yeah, dude, they consistently do it year in and year out. Turn out some of the best talent. They went 9-3 this year. Brandon, they have a big game. Week 2, they travel to Miami down in South Beach, Hard Rock Stadium. If they can do what they did to South Carolina a few years back, you want to talk about a team that's going to be hard to stop?
Yeah.
And then they also have to play Louisiana Lafayette on the road. They also get Coastal Carolina. So they have a pretty tough schedule. They return a lot of people, including Cameron Peoples, to running back. I'm excited to see what Appalachian State does. And Brandon, I've been vocal about it. I've been telling people for a long time they should join the ACC. I think it will add competitiveness, and if they get that ACC money, Brandon, come on, man, you can't tell me Appalachian State can't turn into a serious ACC contender.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Zach. And I mean, there's just a ton of talent in the Sun Belt in general. I feel like we're leaving out Conference USA. I feel like we can't not talk about them in this segment real quick. So I think a school like UAB could benefit from this rule. They've been pretty dominant. They were dominant before they let go of the football program. They've been dominant since in the Conference USA. I think they're right there in Birmingham, and that's prime recruiting territory because you're recruiting in the same areas. You're recruiting in Georgia, you're recruiting Alabama, you're recruiting Tennessee and Mississippi at the very least. You can probably recruit more. And, I mean, if you have that chance, I mean, they finished in the top 25. I can't even count how many times in the past, 2 decades, since 2000.
Yeah.
They've been really good. And if you have a chance to make it to that playoff, you don't think players are going to go be like, yeah, I could probably go play football in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a cool city too. It's the thing. I don't know. I could definitely see them benefiting from this.
And Bill Clark's a great coach. I mean, he was a candidate for Auburn's head coach job this year out of UAB. And Brandon, I know you tried to hide your bias. Let's be honest. Southern Miss is perfect and the perfect location for recruiting. And it's been done there before too. Southern Miss used to be really good, people. PSA, there was a time where they were knocking off the best of the best in the country. there's been some down seasons. Brandon, I would like to – you could probably wrap this segment up with your quick thoughts on Will Hall in his first season for Southern Miss real quick.
Yeah, that program has a little bit of rebuilding, or like they have a lot of turning around to do. Where they were at, like in 2015, was a great spot. You know, that was their. I think it was like a 2-loss season. It was a great year for Southern Miss football. They ended up losing against Western Kentucky in the conference championship that year, but they were on the right track. They had Todd Monken as their head coach, and the thing is about Southern Miss is that because it's a group of 5 school, because it's a school with not a ton of funding for their athletic programs, whenever they are really good and they find a coach who can get it done for them, their coach leaves. And so Todd Monken left to go coach for the Buccaneers. How are you going to say no to that? You know, he left for the NFL after he had that season. So that's what happens in these smaller schools. So that's another thing we didn't talk about, Zach. I think coaches, if they get the funding that they need from the playoff or from their conferences who are making the playoff, they can convince these coaches to stay because they can pay them more money. They can give them higher profile jobs. And I think that's a big part of it. I didn't even think about that until you brought up Southern Miss. So thank you for that, Zach.
Well, I don't know if you saw today. I don't remember the exact number, but Billy Napier got a multi-million-dollar donation today for his past season to build facilities in the stadium up and do renovations to make him stay there. And they fought off Auburn and Tennessee, Brandon, for his job.
Yeah, they did. And I'm going to tell you right now, there were other schools out there for him. There were schools calling him up to be a coordinator. There were schools calling him up to replace their head coach currently.
Yep.
I think LSU was calling him up to be a coordinator. So
I still think the day Coach O is out of LSU, they're going to sell their soul for Billy Napier.
I'm not going to say I hope so, but you guys know what I'm thinking.
I know. But Brandon, let's wrap this up, man. Just briefly here. If the college football playoff for some reason was implemented this season, how many and who from the group of 5, in your opinion, would make the playoffs?
I'm going to come right off the bat real hot here, Zach. I think that if this upcoming season, any group of 5 team, not any, but they're up there for sure. I think Ball State would legitimately have a chance to make this play. I know it's weird, right? From the MAC. Now,
Ball State.
Listen, they just
I didn't know they had a football team still.
They just came off of their MAC championship season. They went 7-1, Zach. They're returning 20 out of their 22 starting players from last season. Their coach is returning. I think this is the perfect year to do it. I mean, if you can run the tables in the MAC, which, let's be honest, it's not that difficult. Yeah, you can finish in the top 10, and you can probably make the playoff. I think Ball State's in a really perfect position to do that. I'm not saying they're going to win any playoff games, but I think that they could legitimately make the playoff.
It'll be that Western Michigan situation against Ohio State that we talked about.
MAC team, so
I think there'd be 2 teams. I think Cincinnati is almost a guarantee to make it. So I won't go too much. I mean, Desmond Ritter's coming back, Brandon. They got a bunch of defensive players coming back. Luke Fickell is that dude. Now, how they replace Freeman on the defensive side of the ball is going to be interesting. How they replace some of those defensive backs, they'll also be interesting. But that front 7, the running backs, everyone's coming back. So Cincinnati, in my opinion, Brandon, would be more of a guarantee than the Pac-12 this year. And then, Brandon, my sleeper team, I said it last night on the Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn. Go check that out. But Liberty would be my pick for the 12 seed, I think.
Now they're
They are independent, but I think they would be ranked high enough to sneak in because we saw them get up to 12 this year.
Yeah, no, they were.
And I think they're gonna be preseason ranked this year, which they weren't last year, so they'll have a head start. Brandon, I don't know about you. It breaks my heart. Y'all see the jerseys in the background. I think Malik Willis right now, Brandon. I know we're big Desmond Ridder fans. Malik Willis might be the best quarterback in the group outside of the Power 5 ranks. I mean, that kid can ball out. We talked about him last year. And Brandon, are you ever counting out Hugh Freeze? I know what he did at Ole Miss is whatever. He's a good football coach.
Yeah.
And Malik Willis, That defense they're returning, they're recruiting well. I think Liberty would ride Malik Willis into the ground, into the 12th seed. And Brandon, depending on the matchup, I think Liberty and Cincinnati both could have a shot to win a playoff game.
I can see that for sure. And I wanted to, that was the whole point of me saying Ball State. I want to go with an underdog here, but Liberty, I guess, is another underdog, but they're more prevalent. I think they can legitimately do it. Malik Willis, I mean, that dude can ball. Like I don't even know how to put this into words, Zach. He can ball. He could probably take over almost any Power 5 program.
Auburn. Hey, Gus. Brian Harson. We have a quarterback opening. We can let go of TJ Finley.
Yeah, transfer back. Let's transfer back.
Send his ass back to LSU and put Bo Nix in the carry on.
That was very seductive right then, Zach. I'm very conflicted.
Also, just real quick, Brandon has to get somewhere, so we're about to wrap this up. Coastal Carolina too. I'm a huge Grayson McCall fan. If it was this year, man, I think they'd have a chance. Now, what that program's going to be going into the future, we don't know. Were they a one-year wonder? We'll find out. But Coastal Carolina would have a chance this year. But guys, comment below what group of 5 programs would benefit most from this expansion, and who would y'all's favorites be to make the playoff from the group of 5 if it was implemented this season? Comment below. We'd love to hear y'all's opinion. Go check out our 2-minute drill episodes from earlier this week. We'll be back later this week with the SEC in 30 days. We got Alabama and Georgia lined up. Those will be our next 2 big episodes. So we appreciate everyone coming on the podcast. But for B-Dub, for myself, the 2-minute drill, and the Blue Bloods, we are out.